đảm bảo quyền của người khuyết tật ở Việt Nam. Trên thế giới có hơn 1 tỷ người khuyết tật, chiếm khoảng 15% tổng dân số. 1% dân số thế giới cần dùng xe lăn, 3,2% hoàn toàn mất thị lực hoặc nhìn kém, 2,6% có khuyết tật về trí tuệ, 6% điếc hoặc nghe kém. Trong số 17 mục tiêu phát triển bền vững của Liên Hợp Quốc SDG 10 hướng tới giảm bất bình đẳng trong và giữa các quốc gia. Thực thi quyền của người khuyết tật là chìa khóa để thực hiện cam kết cốt yếu của chương trình nghị sự 2030, không để ai bị bỏ lại phía sau. Công ước về quyền của người khuyết tật CRPD đã chỉ ra những quyền cơ bản của người khuyết tật. Mục tiêu của CRPD là thúc đẩy, bảo vệ và đảm bảo cho người khuyết tật được thụ hưởng quyền con người một cách bình đẳng. Mỗi quốc gia thành viên của Liên Hợp Quốc cần nộp cho Ủy ban Quốc tế về quyền của người khuyết tật báo cáo định kỳ về việc thực thi CRPD với sự tham vấn người khuyết tật. Hiệp ước Marrakech và Công ước ILO 159 cũng thúc đẩy quyền của người khuyết tật trong việc tiếp cận sách in, đào tạo nghề và việc làm. Tại Việt Nam có 6,2 triệu người khuyết tật. %58% là phụ nữ, 28,3% là trẻ em, 29% là người khuyết tật nặng. Kể từ khi Việt Nam ban hành luật người khuyết tật năm 2010 và phê chuẩn CRPD năm 2014, đã có nhiều tiến bộ trong việc bảo vệ quyền của người khuyết tật. Các tổ chức của người khuyết tật Việt Nam đang tích cực đóng góp vào việc xây dựng và thực thi chính sách quốc gia liên quan đến người khuyết tật. Báo cáo quốc gia về thực thi CRPD đầu tiên của Việt Nam sẽ được Ủy ban về quyền của người khuyết tật xem xét. Với sự hỗ trợ của UNDP, các tổ chức của người khuyết tật có đủ năng lực giám sát tốt tiến độ thực hiện CRPD tại Việt Nam. Luật người khuyết tật của Việt Nam đang trong quá trình tổng kết đánh giá để đề xuất sửa đổi. Đây là cơ hội để các tổ chức của người khuyết tật vận động cho việc tuân thủ CRPD. Để tăng cường sự hòa nhập của người khuyết tật, có 4 việc chính cần thực hiện. 1. Củng cố cơ chế giám sát việc thực hiện CRPD với sự tham vấn có ý nghĩa của người khuyết tật. 2. Xây dựng một cơ sở dữ liệu do người khuyết tật tự đăng ký và tích hợp với cơ sở dữ liệu quốc gia về dân cư. 3. Cần có đại diện của người khuyết tật trong các cơ quan dân cử để có tiếng nói trong quá trình ra quyết định liên quan đến các vấn đề của họ. 4. Đảm bảo tính tiếp cận của các tòa nhà, cơ sở hạ tầng, thông tin, công nghệ và dịch vụ. Hãy cùng hành động vì sự bình đẳng và hòa nhập của người khuyết tật. Đảm bảo quyền của người khuyết tật ở Việt Nam. Trên thế giới có hơn 1 tỷ người khuyết tật, chiếm khoảng 15% tổng dân số. 1% dân số thế giới cần dùng xe lăn, 3,2% hoàn toàn mất thị lực hoặc nhìn kém, 2,6% có khuyết tật về trí tuệ, 6% điếc hoặc nghe kém. Trong số 17 mục tiêu phát triển bền vững của Liên Hợp Quốc SDG 10 hướng tới giảm bất bình đẳng trong và giữa các quốc gia. Thực thi quyền của người khuyết tật là chìa khóa để thực hiện cam kết cốt yếu của chương trình nghị sự 2030, không để ai bị bỏ lại phía sau. Công ước về quyền của người khuyết tật CRPD đã chỉ ra những quyền cơ bản của người khuyết tật. Mục tiêu của CRPD là thúc đẩy, bảo vệ và đảm bảo cho người khuyết tật được thụ hưởng quyền con người một cách bình đẳng. Mỗi quốc gia thành viên của Liên Hợp Quốc cần nộp cho Ủy ban Quốc tế về quyền của người khuyết tật báo cáo định kỳ về việc thực thi CRPD với sự tham vấn người khuyết tật. Hiệp ước Marrakech và Công ước ILO 159 cũng thúc đẩy quyền của người khuyết tật trong việc tiếp cận sách in, đào tạo nghề và việc làm. Tại Việt Nam có 6,2 triệu người khuyết tật. %58% là phụ nữ, 28,3% là trẻ em, 29% là người khuyết tật nặng. Kể từ khi Việt Nam ban hành luật người khuyết tật năm 2010 và phê chuẩn CRPD năm 2014, đã có nhiều tiến bộ trong việc bảo vệ quyền của người khuyết tật. Các tổ chức của người khuyết tật Việt Nam đang tích cực đóng góp vào việc xây dựng và thực thi chính sách quốc gia liên quan đến người khuyết tật. Báo cáo quốc gia về thực thi CRPD đầu tiên của Việt Nam sẽ được Ủy ban về quyền của người khuyết tật xem xét. Với sự hỗ trợ của UNDP, các tổ chức của người khuyết tật có đủ năng lực giám sát tốt tiến độ thực hiện CRPD tại Việt Nam. Luật người khuyết tật của Việt Nam đang trong quá trình tổng kết đánh giá để đề xuất sửa đổi. Đây là cơ hội để các tổ chức của người khuyết tật vận động cho việc tuân thủ CRPD. Để tăng cường sự hòa nhập của người khuyết tật, có 4 việc chính cần thực hiện. 1. Củng cố cơ chế giám sát việc thực hiện CRPD với sự tham vấn có ý nghĩa của người khuyết tật. 2. Xây dựng một cơ sở dữ liệu do người khuyết tật tự đăng ký và tích hợp với cơ sở dữ liệu quốc gia về dân cư. 3. Cần có đại diện của người khuyết tật trong các cơ quan dân cử để có tiếng nói trong quá trình ra quyết định liên quan đến các vấn đề của họ. 4. Đảm bảo tính tiếp cận của các tòa nhà, cơ sở hạ tầng, thông tin, công nghệ và dịch vụ. Hãy cùng hành động vì sự bình đẳng và hòa nhập của người khuyết tật. Đảm bảo quyền của người khuyết tật ở Việt Nam. Trên thế giới có hơn 1 tỷ người khuyết tật, chiếm khoảng 15% tổng dân số. 1% dân số thế giới cần dùng xe lăn, 3,2% hoàn toàn mất thị lực hoặc nhìn kém, 2,6% có khuyết tật về trí tuệ, 6% điếc hoặc nghe kém. Trong số 17 mục tiêu phát triển bền vững của Liên Hợp Quốc SDG 10 hướng tới giảm bất bình đẳng trong và giữa các quốc gia. Thực thi quyền của người khuyết tật là chìa khóa để thực hiện cam kết cốt yếu của chương trình nghị sự 2030, không để ai bị bỏ lại phía sau. Công ước về quyền của người khuyết tật CRPD đã chỉ ra những quyền cơ bản của người khuyết tật. Mục tiêu của CRPD là thúc đẩy, bảo vệ và đảm bảo cho người khuyết tật được thụ hưởng quyền con người một cách bình đẳng. Mỗi quốc gia thành viên của Liên Hợp Quốc cần nộp cho Ủy ban Quốc tế về quyền của người khuyết tật báo cáo định kỳ về việc thực thi CRPD với sự tham vấn người khuyết tật. Hiệp ước Marrakech và Công ước ILO 159 cũng thúc đẩy quyền của người khuyết tật trong việc tiếp cận sách in, đào tạo nghề và việc làm. Tại Việt Nam có 6,2 triệu người khuyết tật. %58% là phụ nữ, 28,3% là trẻ em, 29% là người khuyết tật nặng. Kể từ khi Việt Nam ban hành luật người khuyết tật năm 2010 và phê chuẩn CRPD năm 2014, đã có nhiều tiến bộ trong việc bảo vệ quyền của người khuyết tật. Các tổ chức của người khuyết tật Việt Nam đang tích cực đóng góp vào việc xây dựng và thực thi chính sách quốc gia liên quan đến người khuyết tật. Báo cáo quốc gia về thực thi CRPD đầu tiên của Việt Nam sẽ được Ủy ban về quyền của người khuyết tật xem xét. Với sự hỗ trợ của UNDP, các tổ chức của người khuyết tật có đủ năng lực giám sát tốt tiến độ thực hiện CRPD tại Việt Nam. Luật người khuyết tật của Việt Nam đang trong quá trình tổng kết đánh giá để đề xuất sửa đổi. Đây là cơ hội để các tổ chức của người khuyết tật vận động cho việc tuân thủ CRPD. Để tăng cường sự hòa nhập của người khuyết tật, có 4 việc chính cần thực hiện. 1. Củng cố cơ chế giám sát việc thực hiện CRPD với sự tham vấn có ý nghĩa của người khuyết tật. 2. Xây dựng một cơ sở dữ liệu do người khuyết tật tự đăng ký và tích hợp với cơ sở dữ liệu quốc gia về dân cư. 3. Cần có đại diện của người khuyết tật trong các cơ quan dân cử để có tiếng nói trong quá trình ra quyết định liên quan đến các vấn đề của họ. 4. Đảm bảo tính tiếp cận của các tòa nhà, cơ sở hạ tầng, thông tin, công nghệ và dịch vụ. Hãy cùng hành động vì sự bình đẳng và hòa nhập của người khuyết tật. Đảm bảo quyền của người khuyết tật ở Việt Nam. Trên thế giới có hơn 1 tỷ người khuyết tật, chiếm khoảng 15% tổng dân số. 1% dân số thế giới cần dùng xe lăn, 3,2% hoàn toàn mất thị lực hoặc nhìn kém, 2,6% có khuyết tật về trí tuệ, 6% điếc hoặc nghe kém. Trong số 17 mục tiêu phát triển bền vững của Liên Hợp Quốc SDG 10 hướng tới giảm bất bình đẳng trong và giữa các quốc gia. Thực thi quyền của người khuyết tật là chìa khóa để thực hiện cam kết cốt yếu của chương trình nghị sự 2030, không để ai bị bỏ lại phía sau. Công ước về quyền của người khuyết tật CRPD đã chỉ ra những quyền cơ bản của người khuyết tật. Mục tiêu của CRPD là thúc đẩy, bảo vệ và đảm bảo cho người khuyết tật được thụ hưởng quyền con người một cách bình đẳng. Mỗi quốc gia thành viên của Liên Hợp Quốc cần nộp cho Ủy ban Quốc tế về quyền của người khuyết tật báo cáo định kỳ về việc thực thi CRPD với sự tham vấn người khuyết tật. Hiệp ước Marrakech và Công ước ILO 159 cũng thúc đẩy quyền của người khuyết tật trong việc tiếp cận sách in, đào tạo nghề và việc làm. Tại Việt Nam, có 6,2 triệu người khuyết tật. %58% là phụ nữ, 28,3% là trẻ em, 29% là người khuyết tật nặng. Kể từ khi Việt Nam ban hành luật người khuyết tật năm 2010 và phê chuẩn CRPD năm 2014, đã có nhiều tiến bộ trong việc bảo vệ quyền của người khuyết tật. Các tổ chức của người khuyết tật Việt Nam đang tích cực đóng góp vào việc xây dựng và thực thi chính sách quốc gia liên quan đến người khuyết tật. Báo cáo quốc gia về thực thi CRPD đầu tiên của Việt Nam sẽ được Ủy ban về quyền của người khuyết tật xem xét. Với sự hỗ trợ của UNDP, các tổ chức của người khuyết tật có đủ năng lực giám sát tốt tiến độ thực hiện CRPD tại Việt Nam. Luật người khuyết tật của Việt Nam đang trong quá trình tổng kết đánh giá để đề xuất sửa đổi. Đây là cơ hội để các tổ chức của người khuyết tật vận động cho việc tuân thủ CRPD. Để tăng cường sự hòa nhập của người khuyết tật, có 4 việc chính cần thực hiện. 1. Củng cố cơ chế giám sát việc thực hiện CRPD với sự tham vấn có ý nghĩa của người khuyết tật. 2. Xây dựng một cơ sở dữ liệu do người khuyết tật tự đăng ký và tích hợp với cơ sở dữ liệu quốc gia về dân cư. 3. Cần có đại diện của người khuyết tật trong các cơ quan dân cử để có tiếng nói trong quá trình ra quyết định liên quan đến các vấn đề của họ. 4. Đảm bảo tính tiếp cận của các tòa nhà, cơ sở hạ tầng, thông tin, công nghệ và dịch vụ. Hãy cùng hành động vì sự bình đẳng và hòa nhập của người khuyết tật.
morning, ladies and gentlemen, coming to the thematic discussion, Assessment of Disability Inclusion in Local Governance 2022, co-organized by RMDI and UNDP in Vietnam to share the key findings, piloting the disability inclusion in local governance and the value of the survey, the application and replication of the survey in the coming time. DFAT and UNDP in Vietnam co-fund this study. Coming to the seminar today, I would like to introduce Mr. Patrick Haverment, representative from Mr. Phùng Đức Tùng, Director of Mekong Development Research Institute, Dr. Lê Thị Bích Thuận, Vice Director General of Institute for Urban Studies and Infrastructure Development, Mr. Đặng Văn Thanh, Deputy President of Vietnam Federation of Disability, Ms. Phạm Thị Kim Oanh, Deputy Director from MOCSD, and representative from government agencies, organization of people with disabilities, universities, and research institutes participating online, offline, YouTube. And we have two experts, Mr. Nguyễn Hồng Ngọc, Deputy Director of the Parliamentary Social Affairs Department of the Office of the National Assembly, and Ms. Ngọc, she will be joining later with us in the discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are here. We have the same interest and concern about the more inclusion society for disabilities. The 3rd of December is the National Day of People with Disabilities. In such a special occasion, each of us will have our own way of honoring the disability community. That can be the mobilization for the more accessible infrastructure, or the sustainable livelihood project, or the warm handshaking, or we can together contribute and develop the database for people with disabilities and the public services for them. And that's why we're here today. To open, I would like to invite Mr. Patrick Haverment, Resident Representative UNDP Vietnam, to be on the stage and deliver the opening remarks.
Okay, Mr. Dang Vang Tang, the Deputy President for the Vietnam Federation on Disability. Mr. Phùng Đức Tùng, the Director of the Mekong Development Research Institute. Mr. James Dean, the Second Secretary of the Development from the Australian Embassy, Dr. Lê Thị Bích Thuận, the Vice Director General of the Institute of Urban Studies and Infrastructure Development, representative of state agencies, organizations of and for persons with disabilities, lawyers in academia, and everybody in the room and online today. Welcome to the Green One UN House. It is a great pleasure to greet and meet you all here for the soft launch of the key findings of the pilot assessment of the disability inclusion in local governance in 2022 within the Vietnam Provincial Governance and Public Administration Performance Index, or better known as PAPI. This is funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, DFAT, by Australia. The PAPI Index, as you know, is the country's largest citizen survey that has listened to the voices of the Vietnamese citizens regarding their experience with and perception of the local government performance in governance, public administration, and public service delivery for the last 14 years. In 2022, we have decided to include the voices of persons with disability. This is an opportunity to deepen our mutual understanding and call for action aimed at magnifying the voice of persons with disabilities and strengthening the disability inclusion in local governance in Vietnam. To open our event, I would like to share you with 3 key messages. The first one is inclusive governance and disability disaggregated data are a foundational aspect for the Convention on the Rights of the Persons with Disabilities, or the CRPD, and essential for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development commits to leaving no one behind. In order to fulfill this pledge, we need more granular data to understand the needs and experiences of the most marginalized in society, including persons with disabilities. Better disability data is needed to inform policy decisions that can improve living conditions of more than 1 billion persons with disabilities worldwide. However, currently, too many people are invisible in the data, and too little data is routinely disaggregated. Therefore, UNDP has been advocating for strengthening data systems to drive evidence-based decisions and inclusive policies, boosting the fight against inequality as well as monitoring the progress towards the SDGs. This pilot study is our first step to improve the disability inclusion in PAPI data and, more importantly, in local governance by relaying the voice of the persons with disabilities to policymakers and gradually enhance the accessibility of local public services and administrative procedures. The second point I want to raise is by putting persons with disabilities at the center, UNDP is recognizing their leadership role in the process of policy development and realizing the CRPD motto, nothing about us without us. The following key findings are collective voices of the persons with disabilities, which are documented the first time in this pilot study. Persons with hearing and intellectual disabilities are the most left behind in most of the surveyed areas. Only 18% and 12% of each respective group participating in at least one mass organization at the grassroots level. They are also the major groups reporting being unable to access any information formats and depending on their families when going to public places. These limitations might be attributed to their lowest education level among all types of disabilities, representing by 48% and 51% respectively not attending school at all. 29% of the surveyed persons with disabilities do not have the disability certificate, among whom the majority are the persons with other types of disability, the sixth category in the law on persons with disability, 20% excluding the war veterans. 86% of the informants said that the monthly disability allowance is insufficient to cover their living costs. These talking numbers imply that much needs to be done policy-wise to improve people with disabilities' living conditions, education levels, and their socio-political participation. These findings are becoming increasingly relevant as the law on persons with disabilities is set to be revised in the near future. In addition, UNDP is currently working with MOLISA, the General Statistics Office of Vietnam, line ministries and key stakeholders to strengthen the collection and applicability of disaggregated data on disability. We believe the scientific evidence will become a crucial driver for our actions and national policies to better fulfill the needs of persons with disabilities. And the third point I want to raise is that this is also a good time for our collective action when Vietnam has just been elected to the United Nations Human Rights Council, which facilitates our promotion for the right of the most marginalized, including the right of persons with disability. More evidence, a deeper understanding, and concrete action will continue to demonstrate Vietnam's commitment to upholding human rights and moving the country towards a more inclusive and just society which leaves no one behind. Distinguished guests, I would like to congratulate the research team on their hard work and their achievements. I believe that this research, along with other studies promoting inclusive and disaggregated data, will continue to be upscaled in the coming times. I would like to thank the research team of the Mekong Development Research Institute, DFAT, and all of you who have joined together today to share and encourage our evidence-based practice towards a more inclusive and a just society. Please join me in commemorating the International Day of Persons with Disabilities on the 3rd December. I wish you good health and a fruitful workshop. Thank you for listening. Sin Kam On.
Cảm ơn ông Patrick. And now I would like to introduce Mr. Phung Đức Phu from the Mekong Development Research Institute, the partner of UNDP, to deliver the opening remark.
Mr. Patrick Haverman, Resident Representative UNDP Vietnam, Mr. Đặng Văn Thanh, Vice President of the Vietnam Federation of Disabilities, Mr. James Dean, Second Secretary of the Australian Embassy in Vietnam, representative from state agencies, organizations of and for the disabilities, researchers, and ladies and gentlemen participating in the thematic discussion today. First of all, on behalf of the Mekong Development Research Institute, I would like to thank UNDP for trusting and assigning us to implement a survey, a pilot survey on the inclusion of the disabilities in local governance. The survey for us is quite challenging and demanding. So I would like to thank sincerely DFAT for funding this research or survey. This survey is really practical and crucial for Vietnam. And we haven't got any full and complete survey before, like this study regarding the disability inclusion in local governance. Although this survey is pilot, but it enables us to have a broader view on the inclusion of disabilities in local governance. This survey will provide us with a quite complete picture with different aspects regarding the participation of people with disabilities, including their participation in social organizations, elections, access to information, allowance of disabilities, and their names in the Land Use Right Certificate, and their experience regarding the public administration procedure and public services such as health, education, transportation, etc. This pilot survey was conducted on over 1,700 people selected randomly from the people with disabilities, with different type of disabilities, with each type representing of around 300 people with disabilities under survey. This survey was conducted with different methods, including phoning and website response and video conference interviewing. We also had some challenges and difficulties during conducting the interview and accessing the respondents. The respondents to the interview, some of them did not want to respond to the interviews, and there was some way of communications have put pressure on the surveyor. However, we fulfilled the survey as needed. That's why the survey owed its success to the enthusiastic contribution and support from UNDP experts. On behalf of the MDRI, I would like to thank Mr. Đào Thu Hương, Ms. Huyền, and other representatives from UNDP for their dedicated support in realizing this survey. In the process of designing, analyzing the data, we had great support from UNDP representative. I would like to thank individual persons with disabilities and caregivers to participate in this survey and to provide information to the surveyors. And the surveyors also persistently persuaded the people with disabilities to take part in this survey. And our staff from MDRI made greatest efforts to ensure the survey and with the findings presented today to you. I do hope that with the findings, you will find them very useful. And I do hope that you will contribute comments and feedback for finalization of the survey, as well as the future studies in relation to disability. Thank you so much for your attendance and attention. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Tong. And now I would like to invite Mr. James Dean, the second secretary from the Australian Embassy, to deliver the opening remark.
Mr. Patrick Haverman, UNDP Deputy Representative in Vietnam, Mr. Phung Duc Thong, Mekong Development Research Institute Director, representatives from government agencies, organisations of and for people with disabilities, and academia. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my great pleasure to be here with you today to launch the Assessment of Disability Inclusion in Local Governance to commemorate the International Day of Persons with Disabilities on 3 December. Disability inclusion and gender equality are always priorities for Australia's international engagement in development, humanitarian action and human rights. Australia is a strong and consistent advocate for disability inclusion in international forums. Disability rights was a focus of Australia's 2018 to 2020 term on the UN Human Rights Council, and we have supported the election of Ms. Rosemary Cayes, an Australian human rights lawyer, disability rights activist, researcher and academic, to 2 terms on the UN Committee on the Rights of People with a Disability. In Vietnam, we are committed to ensuring disability inclusion is mainstreamed across all of our programs. Oz for Skills, Australia's scholarship, vocational training and education program, supports Australia Award scholarship candidates with disabilities and maintains their linkages through the Oz for Skills supported alumni in the Disability Inclusion Professional Group. Oz for Skills vocational training activities also promote disability inclusion in accessing employment opportunities. The Gender Responsive, Equitable Agriculture and Tourism Program works with local organisations of and for people with a disability to deliver training on tourism and participation for people with a disability. The women-led output-based aid project increased access to equitable, reliable water and sanitation for 6,400 people with a disability. Australia is proud to support Vietnam's governance and public administration reforms through our partnership with the UNDP to deliver PAPI. We provided an additional Australian $1.1 million to enhance the PAPI survey coverage of people with a disability to ensure diverse perspectives are captured in the results. The study presented today is part of this additional support. Australia is proud to support this timely and insightful study. Through the survey, we have the opportunity to hear the voices and reflections of approximately 1,600 people with a disability on local governance, their participation in public administration and public services, recognising barriers and challenges to the inclusive governance and public service delivery. Strengthening disability inclusive governance and public administration needs holistic diagnosis of disproportionate impacts on people with disabilities. People with some types of disability are often more susceptible to be excluded from political participation and face administrative challenges. For instance, people with speech and language impairment, hearing, cognitive or learning disabilities, and psychological disorders have the lowest rate of participation at around 60%. Nearly 40% of people with speech and language impairment face difficulties when engaging in public procedures. The survey results show the need to improve and strengthen inclusive policies and programs to ensure that people with a disability have their voice heard and participate equally in every aspect of life. There are some areas of improvement to create a disability inclusive governance program, adding mental health services to secure people with disabilities healthy life and well-being, improving government portals to facilitate accessibility and inclusion in public service delivery, and I'm pleased to hear we'll be discussing these issues and many more with the research team today. In closing, I want to acknowledge our partnership with UNDP to support disability inclusion, and also thank the research team for their hard work and enthusiasm in carrying out this piece of research. I look forward to hearing more findings and recommendations from the research team and to the input from all the participants here today. I wish you all good health and happiness and success during the workshop. Xin cảm ơn.
Thank you very much for your very humanitarian speech, encouraging us to a more inclusion world for persons with disabilities. Now we will come to a very significant content today. I would like to invite Dr. Nguyễn Việt Cường, Deputy Director of the MDRI, MA Ming and Madam Queen to be on behalf of the study team to represent the findings of the findings of the pilot study. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm very honored to be on behalf of the research team to present the findings of the pilot survey on inclusion of disability in local governance. My presentation will include the following contents. First of all, I would like to present the overview of the studies, the method of study, and the way we collected data. And now I would like to invite Mr. Kung and Ms. Queen to present the findings of this study. We have 4 key contents. First, it is the sample overview and then the participation of the people with disability at the grassroots level. The third, inclusion of people with disability in public administration, and the last one in public service provision. And then I will provide the conclusion and recommendations on policies and recommendations for the similar research project in the coming time. As you may all know, the study on inclusion of people with disabilities in local governance is visualized as a PAPI research for people with disability to supplement the annual PAPI with the measurement for the person with disabilities assessed by the person with disabilities. This study can be channels of information so that people with disabilities can provide their feedback on public administration, the attitudes of the public servants and civil servant and public employees when receiving the person with disability. These studies include the 3 key objectives. The first one, the first one is to understand the perspective of PWD on the governance, administration's effectiveness and the public services. When participating in this study, giving feedback to the public services, it means that the PWD is monitoring the quality of the public administration and to enhance their participation in this process. From the research results and from the sharing from the PWD that we collected, we do hope that together with the UNDP policy experts and policy experts in and outside the state agencies, we will provide the recommendation on practical action to enable the PWD to be more inclusive in local governance, to enable central and local governments to provide more appropriate policies meeting the needs of PWDs. Another point we'd like to emphasize, because this is very first study and it was a pilot one, so the key objective of this survey is to pilot methodology or approaches of study on PWDs. That's why I would like to present more details on the methodology of this study. Regarding the design of this study, there are 2 components. The first one is qualitative interviews, qualitative and in-depth interview. And for the quantitative survey, we did it in 2022. We selected the typical role models or the typical cases for the issues we found through the qualitative survey for in-depth interview and to illustrate for the results of the interviews. And the interviews were conducted in October and November this year. Regarding the sample, the method of sampling for the quantitative, we had a list of samples, the list from UNDP from the previous studies, including the basic information, including telephone numbers of around 19,472 PWDs. In the list, most of the PWDs are the severely people with severe disabilities, and only some with mild disability. From the list, we conducted the random sampling from of the people aged from 18 and 300 samples for each type of disability. There are 6 types of disability in total. For the diversity of disabilities, we chose one representative type of disability for that sample. We choose the one with less representatives in the sample so that we can have the fair representation of different types of disabilities. So for the we chose Bình Định and the southern provinces because we have the southern side language. So I will present to you more deeply in the survey tools. So in total, from the start of the study, we set to interview from 1,200 to 1,800. So we were successful, and then the rate of successful interviews was 38%. This one is quite popular through the phone interviews. Here we have the statistics on the number of initial samples and survey sample size. As you can see, in the database, we have the number of PWDs of physical, visual, hearing, and speech were very popular here. And the sample was evenly distributed among the 6 types of disabilities from 300 samples. The tools for the study, the questionnaires include the general information on persons with disabilities, and then the question related to inclusive service provision, and then the question on the accessibility to public services, and then the meaningful participation of persons with disability. Regarding the form of study, Dr. Tung mentioned already. For this time of study, we use different approaches because the PWDs belong to the 6 different types of disabilities. So the surveyors provided by MDRI include the people with disability and people non-disability people. So it was very thorough, and we need different type of form. First of all, the interview through a telephone. We interviewed the 5 types of disabilities. The surveyors used the switchboard during 20 or 30 minutes, and they will record, and using CPTO software. For the surveyors who are the person with disabilities, they also conducted the interview through the phone, but they use the short form. It is a familiar form or friendly form for the people with the eyesight or impairment. And for the people with disabilities, with different form of studies, we have different type of doing the interview. And regarding the short form for the people with speech disability, our thanks to UNDP for developing the guiding videos explaining the sign language so that the person with disability can fill in the information themselves, increasing the quality of the database. Because the sign language are different from region to regions, That's why within the framework of the resources of the project, we could not provide the guiding video for all the sign language of all regions. So this time we only conducted the survey for the person with disabilities in the south, and then they represent more in the samples. Regarding the person with heavy disabilities, when they cannot answer the question themselves, we will interview the guardian or the relatives. We comply with the principles of asking for consent from the person with disabilities to see their decision if they want somebody else to answer on behalf of them. Regarding the qualitative interview sample, we based on the quant results, so that for this qualitative sample, it will not be representing regions, but they will be the cases, the typical cases. The sampling size was Quảng Bình and Bình Định, where we have highest samples in the quantitative samples, and some in Hanoi, where we had the experience with the urban areas. So we conducted 18 in-depth interviews. Because this is a pilot survey, so we would like to talk about the limitation of this survey for lesson learned. First of all, regarding the survey tools, we realized that the language in the questionnaire contain quite complicated concept, and it's not easy to understand. For example, the question on the legal services or the mental health services, some people will not understand what the legal services are, or they can be confused between the mental health services. So there is an experience or a lesson learned for the subsequent surveys when we develop the questionnaires. Then the limitation in the sample set. This is a big hindrance. This time of sample, we included persons with disabilities and the invalids, because they have different way of identifying the type of disabilities and the effects on their life, and the type of support and management procedure for them are quite different. In the findings, we will provide some examples about these differences. Regarding the cases of PWDs without certificate of disability, it's difficult for us to identify them as PWDs or what type of disability or what level. For the the sample list, there were errors on the type of disabilities, so it was hard to identify whether to interview them or what type of disability should we rank them or categorize them. Another limitation, for this time of survey, we just stopped at understanding the perspectives of the PWDs without the perspectives from the public service providers, for example, the civil servant and public employees at the local level. That's why it's just one-way perspectives, and sometimes it will reduce the objectivity of the survey. And lastly, it is the sample, the nature of the sample. UNDP collected the list of PWDs from the project supporting the PWDs earlier. So the samples mostly focus on the people with heavy severe disabilities and then the elderly. And we focus more on the central coastal area. That's why it reduced the representative needs of this sample. So all the findings we will present won't be representing the groups of persons with disabilities belonging to the samples that was available, not representing the PWDs nationwide. That's what I want to emphasize, so that when you look at the study, analyze the findings of the study or the survey, you can understand better. Now I would like to invite Dr. Nguyễn Việt Cường to present the findings.
Now I would like to give the presentation on a number of key findings on the survey for the person with disabilities. And now I would like to give a socio-economic characteristics of the survey samples. So we concerned about the education level of the survey participants. We have categorized them in accordance with the educational degree. So lowest level, who have never had access to schooling, and the highest level of college and university. So the rate of the PWD, who have never gone to primary school, accounting for a very high rate, so which is 32% who have never gone to school, and about 29% never passed through primary school, and the other rates also at the very low level in comparison with the general proportions, according to the public survey, which is about 20%, who have ever graduated from the the school. Well, among the other groups, we put in the analysis. So the rate of the person with disabilities, whether there is any kind of the difference, we can see that three groups with the rate of never having access to education, accounting for significant proportions. So you can see disabilities. You can see that this group are having more difficulty in the process of the education. So therefore, the rate of who have never gone to the primary schools, accounting for the very high proportions. So for the other groups with visibility, this rate is a little bit lower, and the access to education should be leading to limited opportunities of job. The education level is also very significant barrier. If you look into this graph, about 6% of the person with disabilities are not doing any work, and even 27% have never had any job at all. Here you can see 70%. So the rate of participant into the workforce is only 27.3%. So these are the people with disabilities who have the income. And among these individuals, we analyze their works and their jobs. So the majority of the works are unstable. Only 14% of the workforce who are the person with disabilities have had the job, stable, with the salary, while the remaining doing the agricultural work and some kind of the unofficial work. So you can see here 3.6% are the owner of the businesses. So the participation in the labor market leading to the economic conditions which are less advantageous. So with the therefore the economic situation is about to be worse than the others. Here we will analyze the groups of the person with disabilities who have never had a job together with the other groups. Different types of the disabilities while the intellectual disabilities with the highest rate, 85%. And of course, they have more limited access to work. And you can see here, well, the economic conditions, we have surveyed the incomes of the people with disabilities, not including the support, but maybe the savings or the lease of the properties. So you can see here, among PWD having job with income, roughly a half of PWD, or 48.9%, have total income of less than 4 million in June 2022. And the percentage of PWD who hadn't got paid, couldn't sell their products is quite high, which is 27%. Among these groups, you can see that about 27% don't have any kind of the revenue or any kind of the income, or either they are unable to sell their products at the moment. So that's the characteristics in terms of the education, job, and the economic conditions for the people with disabilities. And now it would come to person with disabilities participation at the local level, how it should look like. So in the survey, the person with disabilities participation at the local, so we came up with the questions of the participation in social group or organization, participation in voting rights, etc. Well, according to the PAPI, here you might see that including the sampling, the PAPI 2021, the rate is 45%. But the percentage of the PWD anticipating in at least one organizational group is only 34.5%. So the percentage of the male PWD participating in at least one organizational group is 38.8%, and that rate for the female is 28.5%, while the PWD participating, the mental and psychiatric, hearing and speech and intellectual group have a lower percentage participating in social organizations and groups than the other groups. While the popular groups, organizations among the PWDs are the Veterans Association, which is 11.7%, Association of PWD, Associations for the Blind, 11.5%, Association of the Elderly, 10.9%. So reflecting the many veterans and elderly in the sample. Well, most PWD feel comfortable sharing their opinions, but the percentage of the male PWD who feel comfortable showing opinions is higher than that of the female PWD. And second, the percentage of PWD participating in at least one social organizations. Here they might see that the participation in practicing voting rights. So the percentage of PWD not participating in voting for the People Council and National Assembly in May 2021, among the intellectual 76%, mental and psychiatric 70%, and hearing and speech 66.9%. So 47.1% PWD did not participate in voting, and there are differences in voting participation of PWD in terms of gender, disability type, and degree of disability, and veterans participating in voting at much higher rate than PWD. So according to the PAPI 2021, the rate is 34.7%. On the right-hand side, you may see the percentage of PWD not participating in elections of delegates for People's Council National Assembly in May 2021. Very clear, figures. The percentage of PWD not participating in elections of delegates for PC and NA in May 2021 by degree of disability. And the percentage of people participating in voting by PWD groups and veteran groups are also clear on the here you can see well, the very high rate of veterans in the sample in comparison with that of the general population. So here you can see the reason why the people with disabilities not participating at the local level. So the reason why they did not participate in voting, or 27.7% said that I cannot get to the polling place by myself. So according to Clause 4, Article 69, Law on Elections of National Assembly Delegates and People Council of Deputies, in cases where an elector is ill, old or disabled, being unable to go to the polling booth, the election team shall bring an auxiliary ballot box and the ballot to his or her residence so that he or she can receive the ballot and cast it. 24.3% do not have enough awareness, knowledge to vote. So 24.3% said that I was not notified about these elections. And while the mental and psychiatric and intellectual hearing and speech do have the higher rate of being not notified about the election, and 10% saying that they are too busy. While the access to information, well, here you may see the percentages of PWD not easy to receive information in any form. So the group of the intellectual, mental and psychiatric and hearing and speech, well, do show the significantly higher percentages of PWD not easy to have access to information in any form. So most PWD file audio is the easiest way to access information, 63.3%. So only hearing and speech disability file sign language, the easiest way to access information. So for the hearing and speech, intellectual and mental psychiatric, well, groups with the highest percentage are not easy to receive information in any form. Well, sign language and Braille are two forms reported by PWD to be inadequate to other forms that PWD can access. So IDI, person with visual disability, and Benedict shows that even though PWD learn Braille, they cannot access any Braille documents to read. So meanwhile, information sources in text from computers, phone, technical devices are considered perfectly adequate by most PWD, 58.7%. Here, we come to the following conclusion and recommendations. So the level of participation of PWD at the grassroots level is still low, and there are disparities in terms of gender and types of disability. Well, the two biggest factors that hinder PWD from voting are the ability to travel to the polling place and access information about the election. So hearing and speech, intellectual and mental and psychiatric groups with the many difficulties in accessing information. So especially for the female, people with disabilities, the rate of participation is significantly lower, and we need to encourage this factor. So for the ability to travel to the polling place and access information of the election, so the local authorities need to support to PWD access polling places more easily, and the local authorities need to focus on disseminating election information to PWD, especially hearing and speech, mental, psychiatric, and intellectual groups. So for the difficulties in accessing information, so there need to be training in accessing information for these groups. And also there need to be more easily accessible forms of information for these groups. Thank you.
I would like to invite Ms. Queen to present the next part. Thank you, Dr. Cường. Ladies and gentlemen, as introduced, I'm Thiên Quỳnh. I'm from the MDRI. To continue with Mr. Cường about the key findings in this study, in this survey. So today I would like to present two key contents. The first one is related to the level of inclusion of PWDs in public administrative procedures, and then the inclusion of person with disabilities in public service provisions. So they are the very crucial contents in this survey with many interesting findings. Please be attentive so that we can have a favorite discussion. Without further ado, I would like to go to the key points here regarding the inclusions of PWD in public administrative procedures. We focus on three areas. First of all, the disability certificate and disability support pension. The next is access, and then the administrative procedures. Regarding the disability certificate and disability support pension, according to the statistics we collected, we realized that 29.2% of PWD didn't receive or haven't got any disability certificates. Out of this 29.2%, when we search for the reasons why they didn't get the disability certificate, there were half of them said that they was issued with the veteran certificate and other relevant certificate. That was related to the sampling presented by Ms. Ming. Out of the people who didn't receive the disability certificate, around 15% of them did not receive any type of disability certificate or any other type of certificate along with their benefits. Similarly, when we made clear and to see the reason why they didn't receive the disability certificate, we realized that 42.5% of the PWDs mentioned about the administrative procedure at the local level. Many cases when the respondent reported that they didn't know why they didn't get the disability certificate. They have done all the necessary procedures for certificate, but they didn't know why they was not issued with the disability certificate yet. So it relates to the information and the processing of documentations, and most respondents reported the reasons why they didn't receive the certificate. They mentioned that they didn't know how to get access to the procedures of receiving the disability certificate. It related to the dissemination and information and procedures of getting the disability certificate. Many people say that they send their request to the People's Committee at the commune level, but they was not provided with the answer. And 17% of the respondents mentioned why they did not get the disability certificate is because of the lack of support at the local level. So we need to pay more attention to, first, in relation to explaining why the related procedure was not processed, and then the guidelines, the guidance for disability certificates for the people with disability, and then the support to the PWDs at the People's Committee of the ward or township. Regarding disability support pension, when we conducted the in-depth interview, we realized that there are two clear cases. The respondents was revoked with the disability certificate or disability support pension without any explanation. For some other cases, the criteria for issuing disability certificate was not explained clearly to PWDs. So there are two case studies here. First, it is the case where the PWD was frustrated when they was revoked or their disability support was cut off without a clear explanation. They was not explained why. There is such a revocation. The second example we provided here, it is a case where the PWDs was not explained clearly on the criteria, the procedures for certificates and support relating to PWDs. When they went for the certificate, they were explained that they was not belong to the poor or the near poor households. That's why they was not granted with disability certificate or disability support pension. PWDs reported that the local staff, they required them to belong to the poor households. They will not be given with the disability certificate. So this is a perspective from PWDs and the information they got and shared with us. From these study cases, we see that the local authorities need to explain clearly to the PWDs regarding different types of support and certificates to avoid the frustration to the PWDs. The next content is related to the disability certificate and disability support pension. For disability support pension, when we explored about the groups receiving the disability support pension, there were two case studies for us to be aware of. First, there will be a number of PWDs. Although they didn't receive the disability certificate, they received the allowance, disability allowance. For the second case, is contrary. PWDs had the severe, extremely severe disability certificate, but they did not have disability support pension. Although currently they have the disability certificate as severe or extremely severe, but they didn't receive any disability support pension. So this included 39 PWDs and 24 PWDs with severe, extremely severe disability certificate did not have health insurance. So we should pay more attention to different type of allowance or pension for PWDs. Regarding the rate or the ratio of pension, more than 80% of the respondents say that the allowance or the pension was not enough or not sufficient. Out of our samples, we asked the PWDs what was their proposed rate that is basic or can be considered sufficient. So they provide the average suggested support rate of 1,939,000 VND per month, or the median suggested support rate was 1,500,000 VND. During our in-depth interview, the respondents explained why they provided 1.5 million or 1,490,000 1,000 VND. They explained why they provided that figure. So that is related to disability support pension. Now I would like to go to the inscription in land use right certificate. The survey team can see clearly that 46% of PWDs with disability certificate are inscribed in the land use right certificate. It was smaller than the PAPI 2021 of 72.5%. As you can see on the slide, there's a gap or discrepancy between men inscribed in land use right certificates versus women. For men, it was higher. For men, it's 58.5%. For female, 46.9%. But there is no significant disparity between types of disability in being inscribed in land use right certificates. When we conducted the in-depth interviews, we met some cases where the PWDs understood or were aware, the female person with disabilities, they were well aware of the laws and then the exercise of their rights. So they are the cases of female person with disabilities who are inscribed in the land use right certificate. They have the information about the land laws. Regarding the inscription in the land use right certificates, we just make clear to you regarding groups of persons with disabilities inscribed in the land use right certificate. In addition, when we explore the groups of persons with disabilities, 54% of them not inscribed in the land use right certificate. We explore the reason why they was not inscribed in the land use right certificate. The main reason why PWDs are not inscribed, for example, they are not the head of households, for example. They said that they were not head of households, accounting for more than 60%, and this can be explained by the fact that some PWD are living with their family members or with their grandparents or parents. Among the reason of not being the head of the household, it doesn't include the fact that it is the spouse. If it is the spouse, it will be included in the next reason. The land use right certificate only has the spouse's name. If the land use right certificate have the name of the spouse, it was very low. Another reason, it is because I am a PWD, that's why my name was not on the land use right certificate. The survey team realized that there were two key reasons for selection of this answer. When we conducted the interview with the relatives of the PWDs, in some cases, the relatives of the people with disability were concerned about the ability or capacity of the PWDs to hold assets. And secondly, PWDs choose not to have their names in the land use right certificates because they think they have limited ability and have to rely on their relatives. Maybe the land use right certificate had the name of the father or the parents, and after the father died, the person with disability decided to have the name of his brother instead of him on the land use right certificate because he thinks he's unable to do such a procedure, administrative procedure, or the later procedure for selling or buying of the land. So this is related to the inscription in the land civil rights certificate. The next issues I would like to present to you. It is the experience with administrative procedures. Specifically, we can see clearly that 28% of PWDs or guardians have participated in public administrative procedure in local area in the past 12 months. It is quite similar to the PAPI 2021 of 27%. When we look at the PWD who have participated in public administrative procedures in local area in the past 12 months, we can see that 79% of the PWDs guardians who have disability certificate, they say that they had no difficulties when participating in local public administrative procedures. When we break down the statistics for the PWDs experiencing the public administrative procedure by types of disability, we realize that the hearing and speech has more difficulties in local administrative procedures compared to other groups. This was similar when we analyzed about the ratio of election. The hearing and speech had the lowest level of voting. It showed that we need to pay more attention to this type of disability in the future. They require extra attention. Many cases of severe or extremely severe PWDs or elderly, they expect to have support for administrative procedure at home. Similarly to voting, when we conducted in-depth interview at their home, PWDs propose the wish when they watch on TV or on the news. They say that in other places for the elderly or PWDs, they were supported by the local authorities to carry out the administrative procedures at home, but they see no availability in their area. They can be the people with mobility disability, or they have difficulties in moving. That's why they are in need of support of the administrative procedures to be done at home. In relation to the experience with administrative procedures, the use of the e-portals of the local authorities, 22.9% of the people said that they used the e-portal of the local government. They concentrated in the big cities. They are the young people. When we learned about their difficulties and hindrances, when they access in using the e-portal of the local authorities, there are three biggest hindrances. The first one is related to the lack of tools, skills to use technology. The interface and operation are still difficult for PWDs, especially the visual, and the lack of information and knowledge. They was not disseminated about the existence of such e-portal at the local level. And then we also provide the conclusion for the disabilities inclusion in public administrative procedure. The first conclusion is that the rate of disability certificate had not covered all the qualified PWDs. The procedures regarding disability certificate is not yet clear. The disability support pension is not suitable. We have provided the two recommendations. First of all, the local civil servants need to clearly explain regulation and procedures for granting certificates of disability and related supports, especially for the other groups. similarly to other procedures. The second recommendation is related to the fact that the local authorities need to provide disability support pension fairly and in accordance with the regulation for all PWDs who are eligible to receive disability support pension. Consider more suitable disability support pension rate, especially for PWDs who cannot work. The second conclusion is that the rate of PWDs exercising their rights to property is still not high. There is disparity between genders and type of disability, and there are barriers due to social stereotypes. So, local authorities need to popularize or communicate the rights and practice of ownership of land assets according to the regulations to the community and PWDs. Support the PWDs in legal and procedural regarding ownership of land assets if they are entitled to such rights. The third conclusion is the need of PWD to carry out administrative procedures in their locality are similar to those of the general population, but PWDs still face many difficulties doing them themselves, especially with the hearing and speech group. So we need to further support with suitable information sources and methods of administrative procedure for each type and level of disability so that they can directly participate more in the administrative procedures. Now I would like to go into the next content related to the PWD's inclusion in public service delivery.
So the public services, we focus on the three aspects: the access to public works and public transport, the health service, and the services of the common interest to persons with disabilities. Here, for the very first, the access to public works and public transport. Well, you can see very clearly that most of the respondents can go to public works by themselves with the support of family members. And the intellectual and the hearing and speech have the lowest percentage responding to that they do not have any difficulty going to public works by themselves. So when we look into every individual group of the people with disabilities, well, the hearing and speech, well, are having more difficulties. They cannot themselves go to the public places. They need the support of the family members or the support. So for the intellectual and hearing and speech, so the rate of the individual who can go by public transport by themselves only account for 5 to 6%. So that's the public transportation. And the ease of use of local public transport, here you can see 42.4%. PWD responded that the local public transport where they live is not easy to use. And the PWDs who do not know the ease of use of local public transport, mostly because they have never used these transports before. So that's the reason. Either they have never had a chance to use the public transport at the local level, and the PWD inclusion in public service delivery. Well, we come to the following conclusion: the access to public transport. So the public transport system is not popular in small provinces and cities. PWDs have limited access to public transport, and public transport staff play a very important role in supporting PWDs using public transportation. Their attitude can be either enabler or a barrier against PWDs accessing public transport. Here we provide a number of the samples of the responses of the PWDs. So the IDI with PWD, the female, 19 years old, say that, responding to the questions in your locality, do you often use public transport? So the response is no, because there's not many public transport in the city, and many buses from the city to the districts, from one province to another. But within the city, public transport is quite limited. Another response here is, depends on the mood of the staff on the public transport. Like there are some buses that are already familiar with me. Some I go on so often that drivers would open the door. Hey, 30, here, aren't you coming? For example, they're very enthusiastic. But the other drivers can react differently, and people's mood can fluctuate too. So we cannot expect people to always react positively to us. So then there are people like they think that me going out like this is too dangerous, and they were very blunt. If you like these, shouldn't you stay at home? Or why you go out? So I was blunt back. Why are you going out then? So you can see that is the response from the PWD male 14 years old. So it is deeply hurt for the PWD. It is only a number of the very specific, individual examples of the responses from the PWD reacting to the delivery of the public transport services. Here, the health service for PWD, quality of local public hospital services. What percentage of PWD using services at district hospital? Here they may see 36.5% having access to services at the district hospitals. So it is lower than the results of the PAPI 2021, which is 39.9%. And there is a significant disparity between the PWD group and the veteran groups. So there is a big disparity. So ever since COVID-19 started, PWDs rarely go to the hospital. So the health service for PWD, the quality of the local public hospital services. When we survey the PWD in every individual aspect, so the percentages of the PWD using services at district hospitals, so the rating of the local public hospital quality, here they may see that the 89.9% responded that they are treated with respect, while 86.9%, reasonable expenses, 79.3%, while reasonable waiting period, and 86.2% do not have to pay bribery for better treatment. Nearly 60% responded that they are having in the regard of the accessible toilet. So 38.9% only complaining about the elevator, and 68.4% responding in the regard of the wheelchair ramps. So the criteria like treated with respect, waiting period, and expenses are rated higher than the other criteria in the regard of the infrastructure. So the person with disabilities inclusion in public service delivery, the health service for PWD, quality of local public hospital services, so PWD, will have difficulties using hospital toilets, and PWD with doctors and nurses' attitude in the past years highly. So the services of common interest to PWD, 37.7%. Mental health service is a service of common interest to PWD. So that's the rate. So PWD will pay attention to the mental health service. So this is the group of services paid with the most attention by the PWD. So when asked about the reasons why, they need the attention to the mental health service. So this is an example of IDI physical PWD. So he said that why we need to care about mental health, like, well, I have to stay within these four walls all day. I just want to go out, like I have to use taxis to go out. I told you that I just wanted to die, but when I first started to be like this, but my friends, they all said that it is so sad, and that's why everyone wants to live. I want to die instead. So that's the response. When we conducted the in-depth interview, we surveyed about the PWD mental health problem. So in this case, the response is like this. Well, just last year, I felt like life is so tedious and boring. So like when my parents scolded me, I didn't think about their suicide, but I talked myself out of it. I listened to Buddhism, so even though I said that I wouldn't do it, we have to keep being positive and love our life, and some miracle will come to us. Well, and so people with disabilities will stay home for quite a long period of time, parents scolding at them. And of course, when scolded, they very often think about committing suicide. But to the questions, how did they overcome such kind of situations? They responded, okay, well, at that point, so they were thinking about the songs, beautiful songs, about the cartoons, the movies when they watched when they were small, or the time when they were going to school. So why they think about the animated movies rather than watching the movies? Because that was the time when he was able to see, able to walk. So this is the person with the disabilities at this point of time is unable to walk at all. So for them, that is all what is the most beautiful of their life. They will be able to escape the darkness. And when we asked the questions, it was a very sad that the response that during that period of time they did have to balance themselves. They were not able to share that with the other family members, and they were just wishing to have some kind of the friend to come to talk to or to share with. So, with that individual confined in the room, so with no hope. So I come to the following conclusion and recommendations. In general, public transportation and public infrastructure are still not PWD friendly, so we suggest that it is necessary to invest in a PWD friendly public transport system to increase accessibility to public works, thereby increasing the ability to participate in voting activities during public administrative procedures. And it is also necessary to raise awareness and train staff in the public transport system or on service attitudes and ways to support our customers and disabilities. Second, services at the district hospitals are rated quite highly by PWD, but the hospital infrastructure needs to be more PWD friendly. So it is necessary to invest in inclusive hospital infrastructure so that the PWD can use local public health services more easily. So the PWD are most interested in mental health services among the other public services. So more research is needed on issues related to the mental health of persons with disabilities to better understand the needs of persons with disabilities and develop appropriate support and program and policy. And Madam Ming, please. Thank you, Quỳnh. So for the very detailed presentation, the results of the research, and come to a number of the recommendations. I would like to wrap up. First, though there is a pilot study with some limitations regarding the samples, the survey findings have provided key implications and can be further studied. The first, the PWD participation level at local level, while participating in social groups, organizations, voting activities not really high, while female PWDs have lower level of participation compared to male. Visual, intellectual, mental, psychiatric have lower rate of participation compared to the other groups. The public administrative procedures for the PWD still have many drawbacks, especially in providing disability certificates and disability support pension. The public services, such as district hospitals, is rated quite highly by PWD about attitude, waiting time, and cost. However, issues of the infrastructure, such as hospital infrastructure and public transportation, still require improvements to be accessible to PWD. Furthermore, many PWDs express interest in the mental health services. So, through these main topics, we have found that the persons with hearing and speech, intellectual, mental, and physical, psychological disabilities are those that still face many difficulties in participating in social activities, carrying out administrative procedures, and public service. So we come to the following recommendations in terms of the policies, information regarding requirement, procedure for disability certificate and disability support needs to be further popularized. And it is necessary to be more appropriate for more support for PWD to exercise their voting rights and participate more easily in public administrative procedures. It is necessary to invest more in inclusive infrastructure establishment so that PWDs can access public services and join cultural and entertainment activities just like people without a disability. So in addition to inclusive infrastructure establishment, PWD need to be provided knowledge on how to use those infrastructure and establishment. And PWD inclusive policies need to take different types of characteristics and needs to be inclusive to all types of disabilities, so that no group is left behind, particularly the hearing and speech, intellectual and mental and psychiatric group. Further research on PWD inclusivity, so you need a large and precise PWD sample, especially information regarding types and degrees of disability. Different associations between the PWD and veterans, and research topics like discrimination, mental health, gender issues, etc. Need to be put in the implementations. So that's we suggest for further research. So we would like to end our presentation at this point. Thank you for your listening. Thank you.
Thank you. The presentation from the team. One of the findings of the survey is the lack of information and access to information. For many years, UNDP and the government have been joining hands for Vietnam to access to Marrakesh with easier information access. Our common effort has got the excellent results. Now I would like to invite Madam Phạm Thị Kim Oanh, Deputy Director of the Copyright Department, MOCSD, to share this result to all of you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today it's my pleasure to be on behalf of the Copyright Department, MOCSD, to come and attend the thematic discussion today. As a role of the State Management Agency, assigned with the task to advise on the copyrights and other related rights. The government has instructed various ministries to implement all the best jobs to develop policies and to advise on the issues to facilitate PWDs to be included in the community. The MOCSD was assigned by the government, and the copyright department got the job of developing the documentation for Marrakesh treaties for people with different types of disabilities, to have the exceptions, limitation for copyrights. For documentation to Marrakesh Treaty, we got the support from UNDP and other relevant organizations to develop the documents to submit to the competent authorities. The 1st January 2022, the President of Vietnam has signed the accession to Marrakesh Treaty. On the 6th of December 2022, Ambassador Lê Thị Tuyết Mai of Vietnam at the UN headquarters and other organizations in Geneva awarded Vietnam's documents to participate in Marrakesh directly to the director of the World Copyright Organization, so that Vietnam has become the participation of the state member of Marrakesh, facilitating visual impairments to have the different formalities and interfaces, so that all the works can be communicated to the people with personalities, with disabilities, with a wish to bring the best to the people with disabilities, the visuals impairments people, so that they can enhance their spiritual life, and so that we together join hands and to do what we can for persons with disabilities. I would like to congratulate the members who support us during the course of Vietnam accessing to Marrakesh. We do hope that not only Vietnam's accession to Marrakesh, but on the 16th of June 2022, the Copyright Department of MOCSD advised and proposed a separate clause in the IP law. It is an exception clause for the PWDs on copyrights, so that we can complete the legal framework for PWD to get access to intellects and knowledge. I do hope that international organizations and businesses will support us and to have projects, programs, conditions, the best conditions provided to the PWDs, so that the regulations are not only on paper, but they will work in practice, so that all the works can get access to the people who are not lucky enough, and to increase the intellectual knowledge and then the ability to create of the people. Once again, we call for all relevant agencies, media, people to communicate the issues, so that people can join hands for people with disabilities for their inclusion into the community. Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite Mr. Patrick Haverman and Mr. Dương Ngọc Hoàn, Chairman of the Organization of Persons with Disabilities, Pai Dương, to come up.
Well, I mean, it's fantastic, I think, to celebrate something. Vietnam entered the Marrakesh Treaty. So the Marrakesh Treaty is to end the book famine. And so as we know, there are like millions and millions of books out there, but the copyright issue was kind of like holding them back to get them accessible for all the blind people. And so I think it was a very natural treaty to join, but of course, every policy needs advocacy and lobbying. And so I think since 2016-17, we have been working together, I think with the whole blind community on making the case for Vietnam to join. And so yesterday it happened that the ambassador handed it over in Geneva. So I think as well, it's a very good sign that we have this slide with a lot of recommendations. So that's the next list, I think, where we need to find the treaties and the policy changes possible. So I think it's fantastic that that Vietnam joined this treaty. It's really showing as well that all the work we're doing has an impact. I think we need to be patient. Change is not happening tomorrow, but I think really change is happening. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Vâng, tôi xin.
On behalf of the Blind Association members, I would like to thank so much the organization, agencies, international organization, individuals for having supported blind people to sign the Marrakesh treaties so that we are able to get access to information, knowledge, intellects nationally and internationally to open up our knowledge for integration and to scale up our intellects to help other members and to develop and to create changes for the blind in general and PWDs in particular, in general and the blind in particular. Thank you so much. Now we will come to the discussion, the panel discussion. This is a time for us to understand, analyze, and see the application of the studies in the future. Mr. Tung from the MRID, Ms. Hương, UNDP, to moderate this discussion, and the participation of panelists, Mr. Nguyễn Hồng Ngọc from the Office of the National Assembly, Ms. Ngân, the Office of the Government, Dr. Lê Thị Bích Thuận, MRID, and Mr. Đặng Văn Thanh, Vice President of the VFD.
Welcome to the thematic discussions over the application of the research assessing the levels of the inclusion of the PWD at the local level. Mr. Nguyễn Hồng Ngọc from the National Assembly, Madam Hoàng Thị Ngân, the former head of the Department for Public Administrative Positions. Dr. Lô Thị Bích Thuận, the architect and also the vice head of the Department for Urban Development Studies, Mr. Đặng Văn Thanh from the Federation for the Blind of Vietnam, and also representative from the students of the Thái Nguyên University who participated in the study. Well, thank you for the invited guests to the thematic discussions. And the first questions I would like to dedicate to Ms. Phương, one who listened to a number of the stories on different topics. So how do you feel about the levels of the inclusion of PWD at the local level? And as a PWD and the one who conducts the survey, so how do you think about the responses and in the process for the policy advocacy at the local level? Okay, Ms. Phương, well, can you hear me? Yeah, so allow me to share the video. So could you please provide me the right to share the video? Well, you can hear me, right? And you can see me. Well, first of all, I would like to extend the sincere welcome to all of the invited and distinguished participants online and offline. My name is Phương, and it is my great honor to participate on the thematic discussions. So when I conduct the pilot study assessing the level of the inclusion of the PWD at the local level, so as a researcher, and I conducted telephone interviews with the DWD. So I travel across Vietnam, meeting different types of the PWD, and come up with the a number of the findings. And I would like to share the following. Well, first, like the other researchers, I feel deep in my heart about the levels of the inclusion and the participation of the PWD in Vietnam. But the PWD in the rural area, in the small towns and cities and provinces, do have so many difficulties. So similarly, like the one in the large city like Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, and Da Nang. So the PWD or the young, so they are more open in the regard of exercising their rights at the local level, and they have been very straightforward and open about the improvement of the conditions for participation of PWD in Vietnam. But for the elderly PWD, so the majority of them have been so reserved in the regard of their expectations, and also the suggestions for the improvement of the public services. And I myself, through the sharing of the PWD, I can feel that the elderly PWD are very lonely. So they do have the need to share and to talk to the other members of the community, but in their places, especially in the rural area, there are no communities, no groups of the elderly for them to talk together, to share the stories and to communicate. So the activities are not on the regular basis and not ensuring the access for the elderly PWD. So the elderly PWD are only stay at home, so confined within the four walls of the room, and most of the time while communicating with the members of the family. So that is what I do feel so touched with the elderly PWD. So I think that when I share with the PWD, so the expectations to listen to their stories regarding their experiences of having access to the public services at the local level. So and how I would think about and understand about what their feelings and expectations. So in that situation, the PWD were more open responding to the questions. And apart from that, I may provide the additional information. For example, when I interview a number of the blind PWD at the local level, because they don't have access to information, they were so surprised. So when finding out that the one on the other side of the telephone line is also the PWD, so they were so surprised to find out that the PWD may use telephone, having access to computer or the other kind of the facilities which are so useful for them. So I think that in the upcoming time, so we will expand the scope of the research. So not only the number of the participants who are the PWD, but also all kinds of the disabilities and the other aspects of life for the people with disabilities. So that would be very good for me. So when I have access to the computing facilities like hardware or software and the other tools and devices, and the MDRI technical staff provided a lot of the support, helping me access to the computing services, especially the software, enabling me while doing my research and the survey. And last but not least, I would like to thank you from the Mekong Development Institute and to all of the invited participants listening to my sharing. So if there are any comments or questions, I'm very much open to respond to. And it is my pride to contribute to the development of Vietnam. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Phương, for your sharing in the process of experiencing, conducting this pilot survey, and the expectations of yourself towards the people with disabilities. On behalf of the Mekong Development Institute, I would like to thank you, Ms. Phương, for your contributions and for your collaboration and coordination, and I look forward to the future collaborations with Ms. Phương. So this is the very first time we conduct this research, the survey. So it provides a lot of the experiences for Mekong Development Institute to conduct the future studies. And the next question I would like to dedicate to architect Lê Thị Minh Thuận. So, according to a survey conducted by the International Organization for PWD in Vietnam, so 70% of the infrastructure that the PWD are having access to, so 42% of the respondents say that the public transportation services at the local level are inaccessible, and 58% of the respondents say that they need the support of the family members when traveling to the public places. So this is a significant barrier for the people with disabilities. So as an architect and also a researcher with a number of the projects in the regard of the accessibility for PWD of the public transportation services. So what kind of suggestions you may have so for the monitoring and the implementation of the future projects? Mr. Tong, the other participants, first of all, I would like to thank UNDP for giving me the chance to participate in these thematic discussions. So I think it is a quite in-depth research, so surveying all aspects of the PWD and economic, social and economic perspectives, rather new, that I have ever had access to. So in responding to the question of Mr. Tong, I think that perhaps we need to come up with the environment approach, the working environment, social environment, and the access environment for PWD. So since 1995, we have had the very first researches, very first studies. The Ministry of Construction of Australia, regarding the evaluation of the current infrastructure for the PWD at the local level. So at that time, there were no studies or no design for PWD, and by 2002, the Ministry of Construction issue a set of the standards and norms in the regard of the design for PWD to to socialize or to be included into the community. So during that time, the PWD did have very much difficulty in accessing the public or community infrastructure. So I dedicated to Chapter 7 of the law for PWD. So I myself participated in the association for the PWD of Hanoi and Vietnam. So in the regard of the building of the buildings and the infrastructure facilities for with the access to for the PWD. So we consider whether we need to revise the rights of the PWD. So the PWD sometimes don't understand about the rights of their own. So for example, in the United States, so when the PWD cannot access to an infrastructure or having no access to a service, for example, they may sue or they may complain or they may sue, right? But in Vietnam, so the PWD, whether they don't have the access to or they can access, so they have no responses, no complaints. So I think that we need to review, we need to revise the rights for the PWD. So whether they have the right to access to the proper policies dedicated for them. Recently, so we are unable to evaluate so whether the PWD are well trained or well educated or provided with the knowledge to have the right to access these facilities. So I think that the public facilities, that the PWD don't have access to, that is right, because that's in the local provinces and in the rural area. So on the anniversary of 1,000 years for Hanoi, so we review all pavements, pedestrian pavements in Hanoi, but the majority of the pedestrian pavements in Hanoi are inaccessible for PWD. So the PWD benefits interest will not pay with the proper attention. For example, the PWD have the right to access the public facilities like theater, or a movie theater, or stadium, or schools, or the public facilities like the garden or the park, for example. So the PWD don't have access to, and they have no knowledge about whether they have the right to access these facilities. So I do expect that in the upcoming time, so the set of the standards and norm, different phases will be improved, will be further completed, and providing better services for the PWD. And the study regarding the access of the PWD to the construction facilities, though there are the but you can see that at the moment, for example, when building the stadium, meeting stadium, the whole area of about 40 seats dedicated to the PWD on wheelchair. That was a very beautiful place, but then the PWD arrived at the medium stadium. They said, okay, I don't like this place. I would like to be able to mingle with the other normal people. So that's the right of the PWD. so the SEA Games and Para Games. So the rate of the PWD who don't have access to the sporting venues of the people with disabilities were not given the access to the performance areas. And the additional design of the facilities were added in order to facilitate the access of the PWD. So I think it is necessary for training, proper evaluations and assessments. For example, the theater. So there was a friend of mine expressing the dream to be able to visit the big theater in Hanoi once for the whole life. But the steps were too high, unaccessible to the PWD. So the PWD prefer the main entrance to the back door or to the rear entrance. So that's the example that I would like to highlight, that we need to pay more attention to the people with disabilities. And what we have so far have not included the aspects of the PWD in the process of design and the building of these facilities in Vietnam. So that is what I would like to say. And at the rural area and the local community, the local places. So the rise of the PWD in the construction design have not been given the proper attention. So we need to come up with the further policies and the evaluation or assessment, especially in terms of the transportation. We need to complement with the national policy by enabling the inclusion of PWD. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Thuận. I see a very connection point which is interesting in Ms. Phương and Ms. Thuận sharing. In addition to you, when we assess the physical accessibility of the structures or the buildings, we need to assess the awareness of the PWDs regarding their rights to access to the facilities. As Phương shared to us, it's just personal feelings, but she recognized the clear differences in the awareness among the elderly and the young people. I would like to share more with you that in the other UNDP projects to improve capacity on the international conventions on PWDs for leaders, we have the thematic studies. Representatives of groups of persons with disabilities will assess the accessibilities of the public works. So I do hope that the studies from the community of PWDs themselves will be the most precise regarding their access, and their recommendation will be recognized to remove the barriers of the buildings, the construction work, the facilities, so that the PWDs will be the center in making implementation and overseeing of those policies. But now the voice of PWDs are still not heard as not there in the meetings of the People's Committee or the community groups, or especially in the National Assembly, especially though with the different type of disabilities as a mental and psychiatric, hearing and visual, people with disabilities, as we shared in our presentation today. So the next question is for Mr. Đặng Văn Thanh, Vice President of the VFD. As a leader of a central organization of PWDs, do you see the responsibilities and obligation and the roles of PWDs organization in promote their participation in local governance? Thank you, Ms. Hương. Question for me. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I personally highly appreciate MDRI for having a survey assessing the inclusion of PWDs in local governance. And I do think that through this survey, we, especially the VFD, Vietnam Federation of Disabilities, and other organizations for and of PWDs in Vietnam, will have the ground speaking figures, statistics, so that we can advocate and promote the changes or the amendments to the policies to be the most suitable to the PWDs and to facilitate them the most so that their rights can be exercised the best. I would like to introduce about our VFD. It is a social organization operating in the area of PWDs at the central level. VFD includes various members, especially 7 member organizations for and of PWDs at the central level, 47 other members in local level, nationwide. So with the roles and responsibilities of the VFD, we are an organization representing the organization of and for PWDs and more than 7 million PWDs in Vietnam, with the functions of reconciling and coordinating the activities on PWDs. Secondly, we participate in developing and provide social feedback on policies, promote and monitor the implementation of the policies. In particular, we also collect information from various organizations of and for the PWDs and more than 7 million PWDs nationwide. We are aware of their expectations, aspirations, basic needs, essential needs and rights of PWDs nationwide, so that we can convey and promote and urge policymakers, international organizations, NGOs working on PWDs to amend policies and to reinforce the implementation of policies. More especially, we have a very crucial responsibility to protect the legitimate and legal rights of the organization of and for PWDs and more than 7 million PWDs in Vietnam. That is our key mandate. We have been fulfilling it very well during the last years through this survey. As I assess, I highly appreciate this survey for providing us with the speaking figures so that we can making and revising policies. Earlier, ladies and gentlemen, PWDs enjoy the pension of only 170,000 VND, and then 280,000, and then 360,000 so far. Through the aspiration of PWDs, we propose to the government, the National Assembly, and the state to increase the allowance to 400,000 VND for the people with severe and extremely severe disabilities. They can multiply it with the ratio. For the one with severe disabilities, 400,000 per month, and with the extremely severe is 700,000 per month. So we prescribe the medicines, and then we provide the recommendation through the market prices, and then the incremental salaries of the public servants, civil servants and public employees. There are no grounds to provide the precise figures or statistics of how many have such a need to increase their level of pension, and how many PWDs proposed how much they should get a month to support their life. So as I mentioned earlier, this is speaking statistics. 86.1% of PWDs have the need of increasing their pension, support pension, through the survey, or and you know the pension rate earlier, we didn't know how much was sufficient, but now we have the statistics. The minimum ratio anticipated by PWD per month was more than 1,900,000 VND in order to cover the basic expenses. In addition to their normal life, they have different other expenses. For PWDs, they have the needs for healthcare, the medicines, the cost for medicines, and then the assistive devices for them, and for the normal medicines, they are covered by health insurance. But for the people with severe disabilities, they require higher value or more expensive medicines, which are not covered under health insurance. In other developed countries, they also have the wheelchairs, the modern wheelchairs, or some other essential tools or devices. So the expenses would be much costly. And through those speaking statistics, they are really useful for VFD and the organization of and for PWDs at the central and local level, so that we can provide recommendation and the most suitable policies to ensure the minimum living standards of the PWDs. Recently, we together, VFD and UNDP, to have a project to enhance the participations of PWDs in the people's elected bodies. These speaking statistics, the potential candidates, we are having around 100 potential candidates to participate in the trainings, so that by 2026, if there's any, if the election to the National Assembly and People's Councils at all level, we propose 100 or even higher number of PWDs. It will be the so these speaking statistics will be the tool for us to promote policies at the local level and to strengthen or to convey the messages, so that the local community will provide the best condition for PWDs to be nominated, to be elected, in order to improve the life of the PWDs in their own area. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Tang, for his sharing on behalf of the PWDs in Vietnam. A strong motivation for the UNDP's study groups and MDRI group is that Vietnam is reviewing the laws and policies on PWDs to revise the law on PWDs after 10 years of implementation. As a researcher supporting Molisa in reviewing the policies and laws on PWDs, Dr. Nguyễn Thị Ngân, how do you assess the suitability of this pilot survey in relation to the plan to amend the law on PWDs? Thank you for your question. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm an expert and I'm honored to work with various ministries and UNDP to study some issues related to laws and accessibility of PWDs. Regarding the findings of this survey, before answering your question, I would like to provide some comments on the findings of this survey. First, regarding the way we selected the theme, I reaffirm that the selection of the theme is meaningful, informative, and very current. You didn't choose state management, but you choose local governance. When we talk about governance, we talk about interactive between local authorities and people in general, including PWDs. The interactions reflect the recognition, support, and beyond that. Secondly, regarding the contents you selected, the issues you selected, the reports we could participate, I've been seeing myself to see, was I too ambitious? Because you are here very intellectual when you chose 3 groups of issues. First of all, election. Second, participation in the public services. Third, accessibility in transportation. They are the key issues. And all of you here, representative here, are looking forward to the changes in the law and awareness of civil servant, public employees, and those representing the state. I will talk about the accessibility to public services. It's not just the issues of those people who are having social difficulties and barriers. This is a great effort from the administrative unit agencies to satisfy people in general's needs, including the public services implemented by or supported by internet or technologies. Third, it is a methodology. Here we have experts and we have Ms. Phương. She's insider. That's why the authenticity and reliability of this survey increases a lot. Regarding the statistics, these statistics, if is transferred to the functional agency, especially the government and National Assembly agencies, the legislative body to revise the law, they will use the findings when they have the policy impact assessment. Government agencies and specialists are afraid of quantitative assessment. When we talk about women and gender equality, you cannot say that I think that there should be statistics. So today's statistics, if they are transferred to the state agencies, it won't be a bonus or reward for them. And secondly, the statistics as we provided regarding access to public administrative procedures and the barriers, it is another bonus. Fifth, it is the findings of the survey. Now, coming to my answer to your question. In continuation with the compliments, I have a small recommendations for the team. I was a bit late, but it would be more satisfactory if your recommendations were given with the specific proposals for amendment to some law, for example, amendments to the law on PWD, amendments to the copyright law or IP laws, or the amendments to some government decisions or resolutions. So some recommendation to the corresponding level of policy making and lawmaking. I heard that there was a need to distinguish between veterans and PWDs. I would like to say that now we have the laws on people with meritorious services, but we need to have clearer recommendations. Sometimes it's the law, sometimes it's implementation. The law provides clearly, but during implementation, there may be something unclear. Regarding the revision to the law on PWDs, I was participating in reviewing the documents and toward the formation of the policy groups for improving the law on PWDs. As a college and as a researcher like you, once again, I would like to reaffirm that the groups of recommendations provided by you will be certainly useful and practical for impact assessment. And like you say, it's policy advocacy. And to end my remarks, I would like to say that we will certainly have to transfer all the findings of the survey to competent agencies and to create a strong voice, passionate voice. I was late in coming here. I heard Ms. Quinn mentioned she didn't talk about laws and policies alone. I felt the different nuance of feelings and emotions from her. We will package them and to send to the government and National Assembly agencies, especially the Vietnam Vietnam Fatherland Front. There must be the involvement of the Vietnam Fatherland Front. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the sharing from Madam Ngân. We would like to acknowledge the contributions to complete the report at the soonest. So providing support to the competent agency to revise the law and the other policies and documentation. So we have another representative from the National Assembly, the Committee for Social Issues, who will provide the comments on the thematic discussions. So this is not the voice representing the PWD, but it is also the voice of more than 1,600 PWD in the regard of the local administrative perspectives. So, what do you think about the results of this study, which will be included into the other law-making activities of the National Assembly in the near future? Thank you, Madam Đào Thu Hương. Well, and a great welcome to all of the participants. I had access to this study before, and I think that it is a study we have published on the eve of the 30th anniversary of the people with the disabilities, December 3rd. And the 2nd December at the forum commemorating the International Day for PWD, organized by the National Committee for PWD and the UNDP, with the theme listening to PWD. So the results of this study have become more valuable because it is reflecting the voices of the 1,627 PWD individuals on representing more than 4,000 PWD we contacted in Quảng Bình and Bình Định. And these 1,627 PWD representing 5 groups of the PWD altogether, and we think that it is demonstrating the voice of the PWD in the 2 provinces of Quảng Bình and Bình Định. And through the research, we can see that the study result reflecting the following 3 aspects. First, the level of the participation of the PWD, especially in the social organizations, while exercising the voting right and the access to information of the PWD. And second here, the level of the inclusion of the PWD, particularly in the administrative procedures, like the certifications of the social support for PWD and the acknowledgement of the ownership of the property, particularly the Red Book, and the third, which is the reflecting the level of inclusion of PWD in delivery of public services. So the access to the public transport, the public health service, and the other services, provided to the PWD. So the result of the study are the very positive studies for the revision of the law for PWD over the past 10 years, and also providing statistics for the proper assessment and evaluations and the implementations of the policy for PWD with the shortcomings over the past 10 years. Due to the provision of the law on PWDs or the organizations of the implementations of these provisions. So these results of the study reflecting the data and the statistics due to the provision of the law on PWD. It is also the information for the process of the revision or the adoptions of the law on the PWD. So the process of the organizations of the implementation of the law. So we need to promote the implementation of the policy for PWD better in practice. So according to my personal opinion, I think that the through the monitoring of the National Assembly committee, especially the committee on the on social issues, the agency assigned with the task to monitor the policy for PWD, and particularly these study results. We have found that the reason which have hindered the implementation of the right for the PWD is due to the process of the organizations of the implementation. So I would like to refer to one example. So the provision for PWD for not only me but also anyone here. So Article 40, so which is a very specific stipulation, who should do what, and the implementation of these provision in practice. According to Article number 40 of the law on the PWD, the process for renovating the building, the residence building. So 5 types of the building facilities: the office and the stations, bus stations, railway stations, hospitals, the education facilities, the cultural facilities. Must ensure there is access for PWD. Well, you can see that now we come to the 2022. So, right, if you come to visit any types of these facilities, you can see very easily by your own eyes that, not 100% of these facilities ensuring the access for PWD, according to Article 40 of the law on people with disabilities. And second example, so all facilities, social communities, which are not of the 5 types, mentioned, should make sure the access for PWD. So of course, this is about the future in 2025. So that would be very difficult for these facilities in 2025 to meet the provisions of the law. So we expect that the law to specify the comprehensive provision of the access for the PWD, right? And the provision should be user-friendly. It should be easy to be monitored, and should be providing the condition for the implementation. So I think that the the promotion for the organizations of the implementation of the provision of the law on the PWD, so still it is still limited. So we need to ensure the rights and the responsibilities for PWD, we need more to be done. So through this study, I do expect that we will have the other studies to reflect in more comprehensive manner the provision of the law on the PWD. So, for example, the education issues, vocational training, culture, but sports, the building for PWD, communications, etc. So that we have the comprehensive picture regarding provision in the law for PWD over the past 10 years. So how it has been put in the implementation in practice. And we think that so as a participant put it, that is reflecting the governance, the management, and the interactions. So the subject for management and the individual for management. So the people in the competent agency. So the study is more valuable. So when we apply for the right subjects, right? Not only the PWD, but the one who putting the implementation, the provisions of the law for PWD, or the individual who work for the organization for PWD. So it is not only the PWD only, but the normal people. So people understand about the provisions of the law, while people know how to apply. And that would be for the benefits of the people with disabilities. And then we may expand the samples of the study, not only in the two provinces of Quảng Bình and Bình Định, but we may expand to the representatives of the provinces in the other regions across the country. So the results of the study should be more valuable, more practical, and that would be for the promotion of the organization of the implementation of the provision of law on the people with disabilities. So the building of the policies and the laws for the issues for the people with disabilities and the other related laws. For example, at the moment, in the law for the medical checkup, so it is in the close relation to the issues for the people with disabilities. So the provision for the habilitation for the PWD, or the provision regarding the communications at the medical facilities for certain type of the disabilities. For example, the disability in communication, for example. And last but not least, we think that from the different sources of information, so the results of the study for the PWD to be able to be included in the society. So making sure there's no discrimination between PWD and the non-PWD, while the different organizations or the individuals, including the PWD and the member families and the others, to be able to understand the rights and the responsibilities. And from that point of the understanding, we will turn into the very practical actions, promoting the organizations of the implementation of the provision of the law to go into life. For example, the ensuring the access to the public facilities. So this is not what we should do. It is we have to do, we must do, for the benefit of the people with disabilities. Right? The public facilities upon the building, we need to make sure that should be included, included with the access for PWD. And by the concrete action, practical actions, so so we don't have to think about the revision of the law on the basis of the already available provision of the law. We promote the implementation. For example, on December 3rd, at the national, at the International Conference Center. So the building, provided the access for the PWD, but the stage did not provide the access for PWD. And Mr. Tang, the Vice Chairman of the Federation for the PWD, said that the International Center for Conferences did not provide the adequate access for PWD. And then, an immediate response was put in action. So a pathway for the people with disabilities was provided. So UNDP, together with the Federation Confederation for the PWD, to issue a document delivered to the International Conference Center, suggesting that apart from the main building, the other items of the International Conference Center should be equipped with the proper access for the PWD. So from the proper knowledge, understanding about the rights and responsibilities of the PWD, and the understanding of the provision for the law for the PWD. So we turn the proper understanding and knowledge into the concrete and practical actions. So very small actions, but with very much meaning. So with the social impacts, so that all the relevant agency organizations pay more attention to the issue, ensuring the rights and responsibilities for the PWD. So the organization of the implementation need to be more proper. I suggested to the MOLISA, the Ministry for Labor and Social Invalids, on the issues for the PWD of Vietnam. So according to the law, the April 18, this is the day for PWD Vietnam. So we should take April as the month for actions for PWD. So this is under the capacity of MOLISA, and the MOLISA will issue a document organizing a month of actions for PWD. So that would be very meaningful. Providing to the organization of the implementation of the provision of the law for on PWD. So thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nguyễn Hồng Ngọc, for sharing the issues related to the law on PWDs, especially the execution of the law on overseeing the implementation of this law. We conducted this survey on many provinces, 53 provinces. I agree with Ms. Ngân, and I wish that in the next revision of the law, we will put the law into the heart of the PWDs, so that it can reflect truly the benefits and the rights of the PWDs. When we talk about this survey, in foreign countries, in the pavement, they have the track for the PWDs, but my colleagues say that, in Hanoi, people without disability do not have the way to walk. So we consider us as superior than PWDs. That's kind of intuitive reaction. So we consider that we have more privilege even in walking on the pavement. So in doing any work, we should put the PWDs at the center. we should put ourselves into PWD's shoes so that the works or the buildings are meeting the needs of the PWDs. So, Mr. Tung and everybody, the amendment to the law, you wish that the law provisions need to reflect the voice and the feelings of the PWDs in the regulation of the law. Since 2010, the Parliamentary Committee for Social Affairs, now it is the National Assembly Committee for Social Affairs, when they provided the legal review for the draft law on PWDs, the committee was careful in developing the legal review report and submitted it to the National Assembly for adoption. Consultations were conducted for all the stakeholders or all the subjects affected by the law on PWD. The committee was thorough in providing consultations with the PWDs in the law on PWDs. So in the coming time, if there won't be the amendments or revision to the law on PWDs, when it is transferred to the legal review of the Committee for Social Affairs, we will consult the PWDs like we did before when we submitted to the National Assembly to pass the law on PWD in 2010 so that the provision of the law will reflect the voice of the PWDs. Thank you a lot, Mr. Ngọc, for sharing. In this survey, we realized the group that are left behind. For example, the mental psychiatric, and then the hearing, the speech. So in the consultation for revising the law, the needs of the most vulnerable groups won't be reflected, and the voice of the PWDs must be representative of other different types of disabilities and different levels to ensure that nobody is left behind. Thank you a lot, the sharing from our panelists. I would like to connect to the event several days ago. UNDP, UNICEF, and UNFPA had a workshop on the roles and contribution of PWDs in sustainable development. At the workshop, each individual PWDs look at themselves to see what they have contributed to the general development of the country. Of course, each individual contribution is small, but the whole community of PWDs are making efforts to create changes, and they expect to create a more equitable world and accessible world for everyone. The key findings shared by the survey team today are the barriers left that all of us need to join hands to help PWDs exercise their fundamental rights, to promote their ability to contribute to the development of the society. Now I invite Ms. Đỗ Thị Thanh Huyền, PAPI Program Manager, Mr. Thanh, the Vice President of VFD, to share more with you. 1 minute, please, because in my sharing, I forgot to say something. When I was observing the presentation on the survey, there was one expert mentioning about the 39 people with disabilities with the disability certificate, but without enjoying the pension, and 24 of them was not issued with the health insurance. So with the function of the VFD to protect the legitimate rights of the PWDs, please provide us the list of the PWDs. We would like to know clearly about them, the phone number, email, so that we can support, and we will appraise precisely and to send documents to local authorities so that they need to proceed immediately and to protect the rights of the PWDs. And please provide me with a list of those PWDs so that we can help them immediately. Thank you, Mr. Tang. So the survey findings have turned into action. We will provide the relevant information so that the VFD will support the PWDs to have the disability certificate and enjoy the benefit and entitlements from the state. Now I invite Ms. Huyền Papi, UNDP, to share about the initiatives of inclusion of disabilities within PAPI 2022. Thank you, Ms. Hương. Actually, I'm here with a significant role of listening to comments and feedback from all of you here online and offline, especially on Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom. Before coming to my sharing of the initiatives that we will have been and will be implementing, I would like to have some comments, discussion, and I do hope that the panelists here can share more with me. I share with Mr. Đặng Hoàng An my thanks to the survey team for their long efforts to have great survey indicators to be the foundation for the subsequent surveys. I'm impressed with the mental health of the people with disability. I'm a PWD. I pay attention to the psychological health, mental health of the PWD. Can I register the project to implement this scientific research? That is a question for Mr. Tang from one respondent. And regarding other themes such as the public services and other areas, I also have questions for different members of the survey team. The question from Dr. Phạm Duy Hòa. I have some questions, 3 questions from Dr. Hòa. For selection, for sampling, could you explain the old list and how you extract from this? What about the PWD's participation in e-commerce? Third question, access to public services. The results, the findings didn't designate which level of public service provision. Different levels can have different accessibility. This question is from Ms. Ming from the survey team. And a comment from our participant, a member of the club of people with the autistic children. This question is for the PWD of 18 years old and higher. They are in the voting age. For those under 18, there won't be other surveys because when taking part in policy making and monitoring the implementation of policies and providing comments, we need to be voters aged from 18 or more. For underage, we need to go through the parents or the guardians. So it is very clear, clearly explained in this survey. So the member of the autistic children family had a comment. Ms. Nghen's presentation is really interesting. Thank you so much. I hope that the findings of the survey will go through the functional agencies. It will be the documents for policy making for PWD. And I hope that the Committee for Social Affairs of the National Assembly will also be interested in the voice of the autistic children. We have providing our comments on the law on PWDs. The issues of autistic people was not well recognized. After 10 years of implementation of the law on PWDs, the autism is still a big issue. So there is a question to Mr. Ngọc. And then, first of all, Mr. Cường will provide your feedback, response, and then Ms. Ming. Thank you for the questions from the participants. Regarding the questions on the relevance of the variables, we focus on the description and characteristics of PWDs and their accessibility toward the audiences who are not policymakers or not the deep researchers. So under the scope of this survey, we will not analyze deeply statistically, but I hope that the researcher like you and other people, if you get access to the data, you will have more and deeper analysis regarding regression or relevance. So under the scope of this survey, we didn't do that. Thank you. And now Ms. Ming. Thank you, Dr. Hoa, for the question for our team. I would like to answer you regarding the sampling. The list we got was provided by UNDP, aggregate collected from the previous project on PWDs, including 19,500 PWDs of 6 different types of disabilities. From this sample, we selected the samples representing the 6 types of disabilities. We randomly selected 300 samples in each type of disability. As mentioned by Ms. Huyền, these samples won't be people of 18 and older. For the characteristic of this sample, we mentioned already in the limitations of the study, of the survey. Our sample focused on the people with disability, heavy disability and severely, extremely severe disability, the elderly, and geographically is a central coastal area. That's why this sample is not representing the whole country. The second question, PWD's participation in e-commerce, how? Within the scope of my survey, our survey, we didn't cover this. There won't be a suggestion for us in the upcoming studies. In access to public services, we explored from the district level downward. Thank you. As a member of the evaluation team, I would like to add some information on e-commerce.
So the e-commerce is a survey the participation of PWD in the public administrations, the implementation of the rights and responsibilities of the citizens. While the e-commerce activities are the market-based activities. So the subject for the study, the e-commerce is not on the coverage of the study program. So we very much would like to go into the issues the local governments are now putting in the implementations as the agency implementing the law for the PWD, and also the compliance with the laws and the provisions of the law. So, from the local governments, so if you are on the webinar today or in the future, we will have the access to the local governments. We will share the results of the study for the local governments to be able to listen to the responses from the people with the PWD. So the access to the public services at the local level, we conducted the study for this year. Hopefully, for the next year, we will come to the district level. So this is the level which is the closest to the people. The patients who need the treatment for example, the group of the PWD, well, that kind of the facility or that kind of the capacity is not available at the commune hospitals. And apart from that, the public administrative services, there are two levels. So at the commune level, when we do the certificates, that should be at the commune level very much of the time. And in the regard of the land use right certificate, it is at the district level. So that is why we have chosen these two services to to survey the opinions of the people with PWD. What kind of the public administrative service that the PWD have more access to. So the other competent agency at the local level, so how they are providing services to the people, especially the people with the disability. This is the focus of the study. So so far we have not been able to expand to the economic development or the other activities. So that's the scope of the study. We share with the a group of the experts. Mr. Ngọc expected that the study will cover more issues, more aspects, but in order to be able to organize a forum, so with the discussions with the people with disabilities, especially for those who have difficulties for sitting, especially for a long time. So the interview were limited to the maximum of 30 minutes for the convenience of conducting interviews. So for the other types of the disability, the interview may be 1 hour or 1 hour and a half. So, but for the people with disabilities, that should not be exceed 30 minutes in order to ensure that the physical health conditions are adequate for conducting the interview. That's another limitation of this study. And we have always bear in our mind, so the time is gold in general, but time for the people with a disability is more than gold. So that is, I would like to enlighten to you all. Thank you for the sharing from the representative from the study group, and we look forward this pilot study. We have touched upon different aspects of the different topics for study. So these are also the suggestions for the research institute and the group of the researchers who have been together with the UNDP to further study. For example, the mental health of the people with disabilities, the access to the public facilities, etc. So what studies will provide to the improvement of the policies and law in a more comprehensive manner. Ms. Phương at the beginning said that the people with disabilities have the need for communication. And Ms. Quỳnh also emphasized that a lot of the PWD share with the researchers regarding their need. So they very much look forward to the one who listened to them. And in another study, the people with disabilities were so enthusiastic sharing about their needs and their expectations. And another question, Mr. Thanh will share with us the evaluation of the for the blind. So the mental health for the people with disabilities. So the question, the research issues, the mental health for the people with disabilities. the suggestions for the more in-depth study. The Federation for the Blind of Vietnam is a social organization. Now it is the organizations assigned with the task by the government and the Communist Party of Vietnam. The funding for the activities is limited. So in case if you want to do the study, from the basis of a pilot survey, you may improve or upgrade to the level of a project. So in case the federations don't have the funding for the project, and then we may refer you to the other international organizations for the funding for the conducting of the study. So the federation does not have any sources for funding from the government at the moment. We have different foundations providing the funding for the researches and the studies on the social issues. While Mr. Kirk here, the vice chairman of the fund, the rate of acceptance for the proposal is very high. So, Mr. Ngọc, can you share a little bit? The autistic children, the provision in the law for PWD. So I would like to respond to such a question. According to the Article 3 of the law on PWD, on the types of the disabilities. So the types of the disability that anyone should be identified with. So the first physical disability, hearing, listening disability, mental disability, and intellectual disability, and the other type of disability. So 6 types of disabilities. Article 3 provides 3 types of the disabilities that there are the very specific policy to support. So the government of Vietnam specifically stipulates the types of disabilities. This is according to the law of Vietnam. So at the moment, the autism is not specifically regulated in the law, but it is at the competence of the government to acknowledge the autism to be the type of the disability which is specified in the other types of disability. I know the circular of the government have also included autism into the types of the disability. In case you look forward for the upgrade of this type of the disability, in the law for the people with disabilities, and then the government through the overview of the activities for PWD, coming up with the suggestion for the additions or adaptations of the law for PWD, autistic children, this type of the disability. So in the process of the study, and with the full conditions, and then we will put it in the law very specifically about the type of autism. Well, thank you, Mr. Lap. So 1 or 2 questions from the audience, because we are running behind the schedule. So the topic is gathering a lot of attention. Thank you.
Mr. Nam, please. Thank you, Ms. Huyền, for remembering my name. I was happy because I asked Ms. Huyền what's the relation between PAPI and PWDs, and now she answered me in a creative way, and I'm very moved. You know, 19,742, it is equivalent to 19,000 of them are the members of Hanoi Disability Association. So I like in your report, in your survey, when you include the elderly, WHO statements is that nobody can avoid old age. So today, what you are doing is not just for 1 billion people around the world, 7 million people in Vietnam with disability, but what you are doing is really meaningful. You mentioned that you focus on the central coastal area, and you mentioned the two cities of Bình Định and Quy Nhơn. So there's one interesting thing you may notice when you landed in Phu Cát airport. There's a sign, "Welcome to the city that promotes inclusion and equality." It is in Quy Nhơn City, the only place where they have that signage. Quy Nhơn has a lot of community, the communes, they state about the vulnerable people of climate change. So after today, I would like you to pay more attention to where you chose the project site, and then the religious issues. It sounds irrelevant, but according to my practical experience, if the people with disabilities, they follow the Catholic religion, so they need more care for the spiritual life. If you assess the risks of climate change in the coastal areas, or when you work with the ethnic minority people, if you work with the church, you will see the results, because the churches are welcoming a lot of PWDs. So we should pay attention to the ethnicity and dialecticity. You mentioned about the disadvantages of the community in accessing information. So I hope that in your survey, you will talk about the acceleration of information access, because in the law on information access, there is stipulation on this. So please work further on information access so that we have the quality for this study, for the survey. And another sentence from Ms. Thai, I see it's not bad. She said that when the people with disability have barriers to their rights, for example, inaccessibility to the public works, they can sue. I provide you to prescribe me. So you see the PWDs, when they are not satisfied, they feel they are not content, so they can sue, because we are the Oriental people. We do not have the suing culture. So what shall we do? Not long ago, some NGOs like DND and other, they have the survey on disability map. They assess the dissatisfaction, and that the soft lobbying in Bavi, for example, they wrote a article about the barriers in Ho Chi Minh City, and 3 years later, the authority had to remove the barriers. Those who set up the barriers must voice and recognize that, because there's a regulation, technical regulation in construction, we need the legal framework to provide sanction to places that fail to ensure the PWD's accessibility. Vietnam has only one para game, and Vietnam refused to organize it. Not the second time for para game yet. Thank you, Mr. Nam's comment. Now I would like to invite another. It is not a question. I just want to provide some comment. As Mr. Nam, I admire this survey a lot. Very detailed and valuable statistics. Most importantly, the issues that not everyone else think of. For example, elections of the PWDs. I'm from the Independent Living Assistance Center. The physical access of PWDs is a matter of concern, and we focus on that. We highly appreciate this survey and the topic you thought of for the thoroughness of the survey. From our real survey, I would like to provide some slight comments. For example, I participated in a survey on accessibility, sampling, and introducing the questionnaires to PWDs. There was some error. In sampling, we chose the access to public works. We gave it to the wheelchaired PWDs, but this survey, they sent that tool online, not directly asking the respondents. So the one who should be distributed the questionnaire, gave the questionnaires to the one who are not on wheelchairs. So the answer was 100% for the survey results. So there was huge error in the survey findings. Ms. Tuat mentioned about how can we make the PWDs understand about their rights so that their words in the questionnaires are valuable. PWDs do not know they have the right to have the trail in a hospital or accessibility to public works. They do not understand what access is, and local authority do not understand it, neither the community. For example, we ask a meeting place for the PWDs. We ask them, is it accessible? And the hotel staff, they say that yes, we have the elevators. But how to get in the elevator? There are 6 or 7 staircases or even 20 staircases. So they said that is accessible. So what is accessibility? We need to pay attention. And most recently, the high above railways, people say that it's accessible, and they have supporters for the above railways. But when I tried myself, nobody supported, nobody mentioned that there won't be a PWD or person with wheelchair so that they can provide us with the plank to overcome some loops. In Vietnam, there was no support when I tried that railway above, and I was surprised when they said that the accessibility was ensured. You know, there was a huge gap when I get access on the railway. If there was somebody accompanying and supporting, it is okay, but for me there was no support. There were centimeters from the flat ground to the ramp. So on that day, I called an assistant at the railway. They said that many PWDs could access, but why don't you? Why can't you? He didn't support me and he went away. If I did not go with the students who supported me, could not I could not go on that railway train. So that is my sharing, so that the subsequent surveys you can pay attention to do better to improve awareness of PWDs and local governments. Thank you. Actually, your comments are quite sincere, not only for Papi, but also for everybody in general. Basically, essentially, we need to uh, measure experience, not what you fear. That's why the question now are toward what you experience, so that you experience yourself and then you reflect it. It will be more precise. Of course, if you talk to your relatives, your family, you will listen to more difficulties faced by the PWDs, especially their accessibility to public services, etc. So that's what Papi is expecting to bring to the central and local governments to understand about our experience. And I do hope that ourselves will be the one who experience and to provide our comments, not just listening from other people. Mr. Tang, do you want to add something before we close? Because of the time constraint, I would like to propose that Mr. Lam and Ms. Ha, I highly appreciate your comments, and I think that everyone here, you highly appreciate the survey, and I think that in the coming time, I wish to have the phase 2. UNDP, please provide more support to MDRI to have a deeper and broader survey to reflect more fully and more practical, authentic, because the statistics are speaking, they are really essential. Through these statistics, we can make policies. So we really need the authentic and practical statistics. In developed countries, they are doing this very well, but in Vietnam, the statistics on PWDs are conflicting between GSO and MOLISA. So the statistics in the survey are really essential. I really wish that UNDP would support phase 2 so that we can have a much better survey. Thank you, Mr. Tang. He also tell my mind the concluding for today. I'm sorry if anybody haven't asked question. I hope that you will send your question to the survey team through Ms. Hương, Ms. Cho, and everybody else who are here. And Mr. Fu, actually this afternoon, the Mekong Institute will have a conference at 2, so they have to complete this morning so that they can move to the afternoon agenda. So please be sympathetic. Once again, thank you very much. All of you who are participating online, offline, through Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube, and who are directly here. Actually, all the encouraging words, comments from you are consolidating our belief that we are on the right track of not leaving anyone behind. In the development process, there will certainly be the groups we haven't touched upon, not just the legal policies, but even in practice, even in our survey. Many people are left behind because the samples didn't cover everything. we need to select the samples, representative samples. So Mr. Tang also mentioned about the limitation, how to have the reliable data on PWDs that are accessible so that we can use to and we can access to all groups, and we hope that they can participate with us in all the surveys. I would like to quote a sentence from somebody else. Our words to the survey team from MDRI, because it is the very first survey that applies multi-tool for conducting a survey. For the qualitative surveyors, we are stubborn in choosing one option, either questionnaire or one-on-one interview or online interview through phone, not including the 6 methods like this, because it will affect the contrasting and verifying the results. So this is a very special one, special survey for special groups. So I mentioned Mr. Nam in 2018. I remember what I told him, that I owned the PWD community, the perspective from them, and we're trying to complement and compensate. Our thanks to the Australian Embassy DFAT that are accompanying with us in providing us the support sources, not only financial but technical, so that we can expand the survey team to supplement the PAPI we are measuring. We do hope that the findings will come to the competent authorities, because above all, they are responsible, not only exercising law and policies, but also those that collect opinions of voters, citizens to be included in laws and policies. It is a closed circuit, and we are a chain in this circle. This is the perspective of citizens, especially PWDs. We need to listen to them. It will tell us a lot about the compliance of the civil servants and public employees. Not just we think we are offering, here we are exercising the state law and policies, so that we realize the obligation assigned to us from the perspective of the taxpayers. Of course, you have the right to require the effectiveness of the taxpayers. Another thing I share with Ms. Thuận is that the public works currently, like hospitals, schools, and reception and unit for the public services, we need to provide more access to citizens, especially PWDs, especially when we have digitalization. A lot of people won't be left behind. So how to provide better access? Access to information. Marrakesh Treaty's accession is important landmark for PWD to get access to information. How will the local authority to develop the guideline for PWDs to use the public services at the local level, by the speaking books or the braille, so that the PWDs, the hearing, the visual disabilities can get access to. Once again, thank you very much, all of you. Thank you, the technical staff and the interpreters who are helping us to deliver the really significant messages through different channels and through the sign language interpreters. Thank you very much. Thank you. We know that the sign language are different from the North and the South. It is a barrier already for the people from the North, the South to have the same information on the same manner. So I hope that the PWD community, the hearing ones, can get consistent in the sign language so that one interpreter can work on TV station to talk to the whole country instead of just talking to the people in the North. Thank you very much. And goodbye. See you.